Hello and welcome to another episode of Ask the Arts. Today I'm very excited to welcome Rory Hammersley Mather. Welcome.
Thanks, Michelle. Lovely to be here.
This is the first time I've spoken to you in person. I followed your journey online, but this is the first time I've actually got to ask you questions. So thank you so much for agreeing to jump on with me.
No, it's a real honor. I followed your journey too. So I think I was following you long before I had any books out. So yeah.
You've had a big 12 months though.
No, so yeah, it's been a pretty busy, good 12 months.
Tell me a bit about your journey up to this point as an author.
Well, I was doing the math actually earlier on this week, and I started writing in early 2016, and the first few years there, because I was listening to a podcast and someone said someone was saying about their journey, and they'd been writing for 3 years when their first book came out. And for me, I thought that's not too bad a time. That's a pretty good turnaround, really. Um, for me, I started writing 2016, early 2016, and I made all the usual mistakes people make. Like I sent my first manuscript off to Penguin the day I wrote it.
Didn't we all?
Yep. And I heard nothing, which was shocking at the time, but not really surprising now. And but yeah, and from there I just fell headlong into it. Like I after one idea was down, I then just couldn't stop writing really. And over a period of a few years, I wrote madly and thought, why is no one taking me on? Like I'm a genius. Like, but
Awesome. What is going
yeah.
on here?
But and then in 2017 I went to my first well I didn't go to the actual conference itself. I went to an assessment at CYA. Because back then you could just book an assessment and not attend
Yeah.
the actual conference. Um and I did an assessment with a lady who was at Curtis Brown at the time. She's since moved on, but and it was really eye-opening because, as I said, like my self-confidence was through the roof, but I was just like, it was just a matter of time because yeah, like I I'd won the first story I ever wrote had won a competition, and as part of that competition it'd been judged by a editor at Alan Unwin, and as a part of the competition I got a editor not from Alan Unwin, just a general editor like in the real world, to work on like submissions and stuff, for 3 months. But they were really a editor that was for their focus was really fiction, like novels rather than picture books. So it didn't really go anywhere. But after doing that, my confidence was to the roof. So when I had to sit down with the lady from Curtis Brown, and she looked at two of my manuscripts, and one of them she just said, "Oh, it's not bad, but like the writing meant to be the work," and she said it was a bit too similar to actually she said it was too similar to the Gruffalo, which it's not at all. But because that's actually one of my books, Roy the Line, that has since come out, and it was different then, but it still isn't really what I don't really see any Gruffalo um similarities. But I think she was just being nice to me, let me down nicely, which is appreciated.
Yes.
But the other story was one which hasn't come out, and hopefully will one day because I've since fixed it. But it was a story I'd written, which I was super chuffed with. Love the character, love the voice. But she just said, "Well, this is if you divide this into spreads, this is 16 pages, and a picture book's like 24 or 32." And I was like, "Huh, is it?" And like I've been reading picture books as part of my job religiously for like about 2.5 years at that point, and I'd never counted the pages, and I never did any study of the craft. Like I hadn't gone to any Australian Writing Centre courses or done any of that. So that was really eye opening for me, and that made me realize that I had a lot of work to do. So I left that, and I went and I was working in public libraries at the time, and I went and reserved all the books I could find on writing picture books, and there were a few, even though like I live in Toowoomba and whatnot. So public libraries for the win. And I read one which sort of gave me the structure properly, and I was like, all right, well, this makes sense. There's some few rules, and obviously, then it's kind of nice actually because it means you're not winging it as much. And so I went away, and I tried to read all the stories I'd written up to that point, and then had new ideas coming through all the time. And I didn't feel like I was ready to go back to CYA in 2018, so I skipped that year. But actually, no, hold on, is that right? Yes, it is right. Sorry. And then in 2019, I was feeling much more confident. So I feel like by about late 2018, I was feeling pretty confident, and I had one particular manuscript I was like really confident on, which still hasn't actually ever come out, funny enough. But I I felt confident enough to booked a ticket to go, booked assessments with our former agent, because we both used to have the same agent.
Yes.
Um, and also with Claire Halifax, who's now at Walker, but was at the time was with Scholastic, and yeah, and I was feeling pretty confident, and yeah, so went from there. So I didn't get any book deal as a result of that day directly, but like that's how I got in with Justine, our former agent, and that's how it really all started. That's how the contracts started coming, and I think it really helped my confidence even more, and uh, made me feel like I could actually do this. And then I started, I guess, yeah, coming up with more ideas.
I
And
think you've brought up a really great point that a lot of people go into this not knowing that there is a craft to picture books, like that there's actually a structure and, the page count. Oh, I didn't know any of that, but I mean, I'm a bit of a slow learner. It took me 10 years to get my first book published because exactly the same thing. I didn't know that I could go to conferences. I didn't know there were things that I could learn, did the whole submit to Penguin thing. And that was back in the day when you had to submit a reply paid envelope, like
oh
with your
wow,
handwriting on the cover and a stick, like a stamp. And I remember getting the rejection letter back in the mail in my own handwriting. And I went, oh, this is a bit devastating. But I think you talked a lot about having confidence in your stories and knowing that these stories were good. And I think that's you've got to have that so that you can have a bit of a thick skin, would you say, with the amount of rejections that you get?
for sure. Like I always think, like not every story you write, even if you think it's the best thing on earth, not every story you write is going to be the best thing on earth. But there's lots of publishers out there, and I feel like a lot of it is to do with timing. So it's not always that a story's bad. It might be that that publisher has a conflicting title, either already out or in the works, and like you can't know that because the it can be 2 year, 3 year turnaround from signing a picture book up to it coming out. But if that's the case, then they're not going to sign yours. And I've had that a few times where like I've submitted and there's been rejection saying, "Oh, we really like this, but unfortunately we've got X coming out," um, and that's a pity for you, but it does also let you know you're on the right track. And I think yeah, I always think the best thing you can do is keep writing. So a lot of people in the early days they write one story and then that's their sole focus. I want to get this story published, but if you just keep writing, not only will you end up with a lot more stories, but you will get better with time. So that first story might not be up to the standard. Like my first story was about it's a fractured fairy tale based on Hansel and Gretel, and it's got
Oh,
zombies in it, and like
I love it already.
I,
Yes.
I actually do think there's a market for it, but I haven't
Yeah,
found that
I
market
do
yet.
too.
But I also understand now why it probably isn't definitely even if that book does come out one day, it's not the book to start your career with. So
Exactly.
so like it's better to have a Rory H Mather brand out there that people trust and then like, oh, he's done something quirky when if that book ever comes out.
Yeah.
And you see that even with the big names. Like I feel like that's the same with like Mo Willems. He released a book called Nanette's Baguette, which is all in monorhyme, and even like Aaron Blaby with Guff and stuff like that. Like they release books which I feel like you get an insight into a story that they really enjoy, but it might not be the same as what they're producing heavily, and it's probably not the story that they're going to get signed first up. But
And you get better too, don't you? Like every
Definitely.
time you get a book published, every time you get a rejection, every time you get an edit, like I look back now at the first books that I did and I still love them, but then I look at my latest books and I go, oh yeah, that's right. This is what I learned. This is what I learned. And again, being a slow learner, like probably it wasn't until book 4 for me that I even really started taking the craft seriously and realizing that there's so many things out of your control. Like you
Mm.
said, with, submitting to publishers who already have something on that subject. So for people who are actively submitting at the moment, would you have any tips for them on what is, best practice?
I definitely think research a publisher. For me, I was like, oh, Penguin. If I get a Penguin book, then it'll eventually become a Penguin classic. And who doesn't want a Penguin classic?
I know, right? Like, of
Um,
course, that was always going to happen.
but like, yeah, I think obviously some publishers are more tailored towards humor. Not that some publishers are tailored towards humor; they'll do hard as well. But like if you got a book that's about a an issue in society, then right now, like go for Bright Light. Make Bright Light your target. Go to book a conference ticket to CYA or Kidlit Vic or one of those other conferences, one of the CBCA conferences, and or Right Links, and try to get in with Harley Grant because they're the people that are making these beautiful books on issues that matter. And obviously, make sure then you look at their catalog and say, oh, I've got a book on, say you got a book on neurodiversity. If they've already got one on neurodiversity, make sure yours is touching on a different area of that than what their current book is. And yeah, I think it's important to look and to do your research, but it's important to just not give up at the first hurdle because like my latest book was rejected by one, two, three, four publishers before it got picked up by the fifth, and it was a slow process. I submitted it in August one year, and I got a email like 6 o'clock at night in April the following year saying, "Hey, is this still available?" And then even then, a few more months before it actually got signed. So it takes patience, this industry. But yeah, if you're willing to be patient, and it is hard. Like I still struggle with the patience. Like the poor people at the firm received so many emails in the last month, being like, "Hey, is the book in the warehouse yet?" And when it was in the warehouse, have you posted it yet? And like because I was just anxiously staring at the postman every day. And yeah, so it
It's
does take patience.
hard. I know, right? And I think one of the things you don't realize coming into this industry as well is that you've got to play the long game. Like, because everything takes so much time, even as an author who can't illustrate, submitting your manuscript and then waiting for the illustrator to do the illustrations, that can take 12 months. You've really got to hone your patience and make sure that you're not missing out on opportunity because either rushing something and making a decision that maybe isn't great, or two, annoying everybody around you because you're like, I want it now, I want it now. So
Yeah.
how do you kind of find a balance between submitting and then waiting to hear back? Have you got like a process so that you don't just go completely nuts in the meantime?
I mean, when I'm anxious, my nails get chewed. So I don't even know what I'm anxious about at the moment, but I'm definitely anxious about something. But I do
Okay.
have a few things on submission, so it's probably that. Um, I think my process is just probably just to try think of focus on other things. Like it is easier if you have books coming out because you've got something else to focus on. So like I can focus on marketing for Slossler parties, but otherwise it's just focusing on writing and like yeah making the next story because like I I've got a story which I absolutely adore and when I submitted it it turned out that there's another story which is similar though, which was a CBCA nominated story a couple of years back. And so like and straight away the publishers were like, oh, we can't publish this because it's similar to this. And I was like, oh no. So one, I should have done my research, but two, I'm playing a long game and I'm going to be patient. And I'm 34 this year, and I'm going to submit that again in 10 years' time
Yeah.
when that CBCA book's like
Mark your
14, 15 year
diary.
old. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll just send myself a calendar in right now,
Yeah.
and yeah, we write.
Yeah, you'll be fine. So, do you struggle with like the marketing bit? I know everyone again goes into this thinking that you can just stay at home and drink coffee and write in your jammies all day, but the marketing and promotion and the author branding and all of that is such a huge thing. Is that something that comes easily to you?
It is in that I enjoy doing it, but it's not in that I don't really know what I'm doing. So I'm not. I don't really have a fixed plan. I just am winging it to a large extent. So, like for example, um, pardon me, I feel like Wednesdays are a good day to post, and that seems to be backed up by publishers. Like when I did a book trailer for my last book, they said, "I'll post it on a Wednesday." And I actually know it was the cover reveal. Post on a Wednesday and post it at 10 a.m. on a Wednesday. So I feel like, and I discovered that just by trial and error. I also find like posting pictures of yourself gets more traction than posting a picture of a cover. You with the cover is even better, of course. But so yeah, I don't know. I do like marketing, but I don't really know what I'm doing with it, and I'm just sort of learning as I go along. And I do like to try new things and try to think outside the box. My next book's about sloths, and so I bought a sloth onesie. I've got sloth
Oh,
slippers and things like
yeah,
that.
so cool.
But it's
And
very
now,
hot, so it's
oh, I know. And well, hang on, when is it coming out?
end of the month. So
Oh, okay, yeah, so it's still going to be hot. Yeah, fair
yeah,
enough. All right. You'll own it. It's fine. And I mean, now you've got this amazing marketing tool that you can use. I saw the unboxing video that you had when you were opening the box of books with your little girl. And I just kept thinking, your wife is standing holding the camera going, Rory, the knife, Rory,
yep,
Rory, big
100%.
Rory.
She didn't
Like,
think she didn't think I could open the box and hold Ada.
yeah.
And I knew I could. I'm pretty uncoordinated to be honest, but I'm uncoordinated more with like sports, not with doing something while I'm sitting down and something in my hands. I'm pretty good with that.
Yeah.
Um, definitely could have gone pear shaped, but thankfully didn't. But yeah, no, I do think people definitely love babies. So
They do.
she's a great little marketing tool.
I'm pretty sure you can count her as a tax deduction now.
Well, all her clothes,
Yep.
all the food because
Yep.
she eats a lot, little thing.
Yeah, that's
All the
right,
nappies.
And I'm sure you would have to like take her to every book launch now so that, it's transport, so that's your car, you can
Yeah,
claim
and
that.
well, I was already claiming all the picture books I bought as research, but now yeah,
Yeah.
double down and yeah, claim them as actually
Abs-
I
I
do it for her
claimed
as
my
well.
chickens.
Oh really?
Yes. Don't tell my tax accountant that. But I did. I said, well, the book was about chickens, so I had to have chickens for marketing purposes. So yeah. We do what we
Well,
have to do. Hey,
I'm not an accountant, but that sounds like it adds up to me.
absolutely. As in your professional opinion as a picture book author, you think that that's going to pass
Yeah,
the tax office, then yep, I'm fine with that too. So tell me about the process of where you come up with your ideas because you've got such a lovely cross section of books now about lots of different things. Is it just a matter of lightning striking or do
it
you
can
like
be.
certain things? Yeah.
It can be, or it can be like a matter of like just working through a concept. So, for example, I wrote a story last year which came about just simply because I was about to hop in the shower and a common expression popped into my head. I was like, oh, and I like sort of thought about it from outside the box, like almost like a looking into a fish tank, and the words are there, and you're looking from the outside from a different viewpoint. And I thought I can write that as a story, and so then I like yeah. So oftentimes they are random, completely like just popping into your head, but other times it's like just thinking about how you would approach a topic. So, for example, I talk about this when I go into schools, like. I always think that with writing picture books, you can start off if you're writing about a particular topic. Say for example, you're writing about schools. um, you start off by starting by thinking inside the box. So you know that schools have playgrounds, schools have um, lunch and teachers and students and uniforms and rules, which is what my school book's about, monster school rules. Um, and then after you know you've got the the main theme, so you know what all those things, then you can step outside the box and add the other elements that make a picture book fun. So like monsters or um, the example I use when I'm doing school visits is thinking about outer space. So like I say, all right, guys, tell me what do you know about outer space? What's in outer space? So like, planets, rockets, meteors, sun, like all these different things, astronauts, aliens, all these things. And then I show them four titles from the last 10 years. So like I show them aliens love underpants. So I'm like, well, I don't know whether aliens love underpants. I've never met any, but that's taking some of the elements of outer space and putting a twist on it because you're the author and you can do that. Or there's one that was a CBCA, not CBCA. It was a simultaneous storytime book, I think in like 2018 or thereabouts. And it's the cow trips over the moon, I think it is, or something like that. Um, and also that's just taking that little nursery rhyme and building on it and that sort of thing. So I think, yeah, it's important to. I find that to be a really useful tool if you are trying to write to a particular topic, just to brainstorm everything you know about that topic and then work back. So, like when I wrote Monster School Rules, I was actually asked by Scholastic to write a book on starting school, and they said don't think about it too seriously. It can be pretty broad. It doesn't have to be like this is the first day, you picking up your uniform and putting your shoes on for the first time. It's not like that. Like it's just school broadly. And I went away for like about 6 weeks, and I wrote about a story a week, and all of them were terrible. Because I wrote like a story on picking the perfect backpack, and I wrote a story on a dog eating my homework and things like that. But it wasn't until I was out of school doing one of my very first school visits actually, and they had a sign on their library that just said the rules to the loo, and I was ducking out between a session and just going to the bathroom, and I saw this sign. I quickly took my phone out, making sure there was no kids in the shot, and took a picture of the rules of the loo, and I still got that photo, um but as soon as I was like rules, it's perfect. I can write about school rules, and I was like, well, what would be funny? I thought, monsters, and monsters having school rules. And the thing I always ask the kids is, do you think monsters would have the same rules as you? And they always like, no. But they do. But it's just more funny because it's, if it's one hat for every head and a monster has three or four heads, that's to a little kid more humorous. So
You
yeah,
write humor really well, and obviously you know that you're hilarious.
my
So
wife disagrees, and actually all our friends have. We did a vote. Apparently, my wife's the funny one in the relationship. I don't agree.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, no, I'd have to say that that kind of makes sense. But I mean, it's so hard. Well, I think it is hard to write good comedy for kids, and they're such hard critics, and they will tell you if something's not funny. Like, I mean, I used to think I was hilarious, but my kids have said, no, Mum, you are not funny at all. So, is humor your favorite way to connect with kids, or does it just depend on the story?
I definitely do like humor. And I think it comes more natural to me than a serious topic. Um, but I think what you're saying there is true. Like kids are the harshest critics, but I also think it's a real, um, like kids develop so quickly, and it's at such there's so many stages of their development in such a short period of time that your window of humor, like you could write a book that's hilarious to 10-year-olds, but it's not going to go over the heads of the 6-year-olds. And I really found that like in book week last year, I did a school visit and I was teaching year fives about writing picture books. And I read some of mine as examples, and not one smile at all. But then in lunchtime, they asked us to go read to the preppies, and they were in hysterics. And the same, it's just about finding the correct audience for that humor too.
Yeah. Um, there's a lot of talk at the moment about how kids aren't being read bedtime stories, and that we've got this kind of next generation of kids growing up who don't have access to picture books at home, who are only getting read to at school, and who are, using all of their time when they want to have that downtime on an iPad instead of a book. Do you see that in school visits? Is that something that you've thought about?
Not too much. Like I think there's always going to be the kids in schools that love reading, and they'll often come up to you after a session. And then there's the kids who are not into reading at all. And like I kind of relate to the latter a bit more because when I was a kid, I wasn't a big reader. I grew up in a house that was chock full of books, and my parents read to us. But I just wasn't into it myself, and I just put that down to I wasn't disruptive though. Like I remember, I have a memory of sitting in my school library and having I think it was our like library induction sort of thing. And I remember the librarian talking about how, books are spines just like us. So we've got to be gentle with them and not throw them about and all that. But I think it's important to have all sorts of books out there, like humorous, serious, and different sorts of humor and different sorts of seriousness. Because I think it's about exposing a kid to the right book. So for me, the first books I started to enjoy were like 1001 Fantastic Facts and those sorts of books. And I didn't even realize I was into reading. Like I only actually realized this very recently because I was reflecting on it. Because I always said that the books that got me into reading were Harry Potter. And that's true. Harry Potter were the books that got me into reading fiction. And I do mostly read fiction now. I listen to a lot of history podcasts. But reading generally, it would have been, like the factual books. And I think if a kid's got an iPad and they're reading something on the iPad, whether it's a book or whether it's just instructions or like they might be playing Minecraft and there might be something they've got to do in there. They've got to read something to do it. Like I think it's as long as they're reading it all, that's good. Like I learned to spell and type playing Age of Empires on the computer in the 90s. So yeah, however you get it, as long as you get it, I guess.
I remember I got kicked out of typing class. I actually I ran into my typing teacher as a grown up, and I apologized to her because I can remember like sitting in typing class, and this is like typewriter typing class, showing my age, and it was like A S D F, and I was like, oh, I am never going to need to know how to type. Why do I have to learn how to type? This is ridiculous. And like I got kicked out of class and had to go sit outside, and I went and I said, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for being that girl, and now I type every single day. But how did the kid who didn't like reading that much turn into a picture book author?
I always liked words. I think like I didn't like reading, but I liked words. So um, as I say, I like those factual books. And like one of my earliest memories of writing something was in grade 6. I was homeschooled for 4 years because we were living overseas and moving around a lot. And in grade 6, we were doing English that was based around history. And I remember we had to write a poem for a medieval poem. And I distinctly remember writing this little poem about some knights, and just not really thinking. I've never been a plotter, but I in this poem I wasn't plotting at all. I just said hiding from the enemy, and Mum was like, "Knights don't hide from the enemy, Rory." And I've always had like a quick wit, I guess, when it comes to like coming up with the next phrase. And the next phrase was to catch them by surprise, and that's the only two lines of that poem that I remember. But that's the first time I remember writing a poem. And after that, I used to write Mum like Mother's Day and birthday and whatnot poems in every year, and that kept going up into my 20s. And in my early 20s, I wanted to be a rapper, and I can't rap at all.
I could see that.
I can't
What
rap
was
at
your
all.
rapper name? Did you have a rapper name?
Popeye, because my uncle used to call me Popeye a lot.
So you've missed your vocation there.
No, I definitely didn't. I think for me it was finding the right outlet. So I always liked writing rhyme, something that just about a good rhyme that brings me satisfaction. But um, when I was 24 and a bit, I took a job. I was working in public libraries for that stage for about 7 years at that stage, and I took a job in the young people's team. I had to read a book as part of my interview, and I read "Where's My Teddy" by Jez Alborough, and that was the first time I read a picture book. Probably, actually, I wouldn't be surprised if that was the first time I read a picture book ever, because I just wasn't big on reading. I remember being read as a little kid at the in my primary school, when that lady, the librarian, talked to us about the spine. I remember 3 books. I remember, actually, I remember The Very Hungry Caterpillar. I remember The True Story of the Three Little Pigs, and one called Billy the Punk. Those are the 3 main books I remember. And there was also one other one about, I can't remember the title though, and it's a well-known one though. The cover is of a grandfather sitting up in bed, looking worried, and his teeth are missing.
Oh, I know which one you're talking about. I don't know the title, but yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
So
And the
those are,
dog has them.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so those stories I got read them, but I didn't ever actually pick up a picture book and read them myself. I remember Dad taking me to the library when I was a little kid, and the books I was into were all books on ants, because I loved ants. I didn't read any of them, but I borrowed heaps of them, and then returned them late every time. But so yeah, I think for me it was just discovering this format of poetry. There was picture books, and like obviously not all picture books rhyme, but I would say the majority of them probably do. And the ones that I was reading did, because I was reading for story time, and I found that it was easier as the reader to not mess up if you had a picture book that was rhyming, because you had a natural flow. Whereas I always found like you could just enunciate a word wrong if it was in prose, and then throw out the whole sound of the page. And so, being a nervous person, I mean, being like 24 years old and having to read in front of a bunch of little kids and their parents, I was pretty nervous. So I picked the easiest books. So at the time, like the National Simultaneous Storytime Book of the Year was The Brothers Quibble by Aaron Blabey. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I read that like maybe 2,000 times before the day, because on the day I was in charge of reading that and doing the craft for National Simultaneous Storytime. And so yeah, I fell in love with the format and fell in love with the rhyme. And I thought, I didn't start writing immediately. Like, it was still over 12 months in that role before I started writing. But ideas started forming then. And once you've had, as I said, with that first story, once I wrote that first story, it's just a compulsion. Like, ideas pop into my head and I have to explore them. And sometimes they don't end up as anything more than a text message to myself that makes no sense later. And other times they become a full-fledged story. So yeah.
Yeah, it's so weird. Mine was poetry as well, but I was really bad at spelling. Like, I'm still really bad at spelling. And my grade 5 teacher got me into Australian bush poetry to help me with learning my spelling words and predicting words. And then
Right.
it kind of went from there. And my very first book was actually based on a poem that I wrote in grade 5. So, but I love poetry. I wish kids wrote more poetry just for fun instead of having
Yeah.
to do it for
Well,
tea.
it is cool that they do teach it these days, though, too. Like,
Mm.
and they're learning about story structure and all those sorts of things. And I don't know whether it's just because I was homeschooled, or like, I was homeschooled through a school though, but I don't know whether the curriculum back then had those things. And it's
I
really
can't
cool to,
remember ever learning about it.
yeah. And part of it could just be because we're old,
Yeah,
and
it could be.
you do like, you don't remember everything you learn, but
Could
I,
be.
I I really don't think we did. Like, I remember being read to in school, but I don't remember going into the nuts and bolts of story structure and that sort of thing. Or even like grade 2s, when they work on rhyme, and they use it to, as you say, try to get them to predict what the next ending of rhyme will be. I don't remember doing that, but
I remember my first memory of ever actually meeting an author was in grade 7. And it was David Cox, who was the author illustrator of Tin Lizzie, and I still have that book, like
Oh wow.
a prized possession. But I didn't even know authors were a thing. Like I never even thought about that somebody actually had to write all of those books in the library. And I remember one of my first school visits, was talking to some grade 3 kids, and I was introduced as the author, and he said, "Oh, I thought all authors were dead." Like books are
Oh,
written by books are written by they're so old. They're written by people like hundreds of years ago. So it's funny, isn't it, that you don't underestimate kids who are maybe not showing signs early on, because I definitely didn't show signs early on that I wanted to be an author, but sometimes it just comes out of you when you're older and it's just like, oh, that's right, this is what I was meant to be doing, which is a lovely surprise.
yeah, for sure. Like I, I, I didn't start reading till I was in grade 2. Like my parents always tell me they wanted to keep not they didn't, but the teachers in my school wanted to keep me back in grade 1 because I couldn't read. And they're like, oh no, he'll catch up. And like that might not always be the case. So if anyone listening at home, maybe listen to your teachers or ask for other advice. But like, my parents felt pretty confident that I would catch up, and I guess I did eventually. Definitely took a few years, but yeah, obviously, yeah, you don't know how someone's going to turn out, and I think I definitely do think that having books in your life, whether or not you're reading them, seeing other people read them, definitely makes you more likely to read them, and probably I assume um, possibly more likely to write them too.
Yeah, and kids having author visits, I think, is super important. Like actually seeing that it's a thing, especially like preppies and the little ones meeting an author and meeting an illustrator and talking about the process. Like that's huge. Like I don't think we realize that the ones of us who kind of fell backwards into this profession of, and when I think as well for me, because writings like come so naturally to me that I forget that sometimes it doesn't for other people. And that's been a big learning curve with my own kids, and Tommy, who's dyslexic, knowing that not everybody finds words as easy and amazing, and as, you know, like words for
Yeah,
me are Lego. Like that's how my brother loves Lego. I do the same thing with words, and it's been really interesting. And I think that's one of the reasons I love school visits so much, is because you just see that diversity in kids. Would that be right?
yeah, for sure. I mean, but I also love Lego and words.
You do both.
Um, but no, I think yeah, and I think like you're saying about Tommy, like it's really cool. I've been watching his journey as an actor and stuff. I guess like it must be inspiring just to see his creativity flourishing in that
Yeah.
field too. And like obviously there's a, there's actors out there who would have the same issues, like who would also be dyslexic and just learn their lines in other ways, like we're having to speak spoken to them or something like that. But um yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Just
Yeah.
how
I think things have changed, because I can always also remember growing up that you couldn't be an author as a job. Like it was a hobby. It was a lovely hobby
still a
to
hobby for
write
me.
stories. Yeah, it is not. Shut up. You're doing very well, thank you, Mr. Mather.
I'm doing well, but I'm still working full time on the side. So
Yeah, but that's just the industry, isn't it? You
yeah,
know. Yeah, so I love that we are in this time. Like we're actually super lucky that we have this opportunity now with the way things are to inspire that next generation. And I know you do it every time you walk into a classroom and all these little faces just look up at you and like, oh my gosh, it's him.
yeah,
Like that must be pretty cool.
it's so cool because like what's funny because like um when the teachers say some schools you go to, I feel like the teachers have they've really hyped you up, and the teachers
Yeah.
and the kids are like, oh my goodness. And like there was one school I went to where I was presenting to about 200 kids in a basketball stadium, and they got me to hide, like they laid out like a red carpet type thing. They got me to hide in a room in the back of the hall, and then like they say, oh, he's really shy, though, guys. So you got to clap really loud. And then like I'd like poke. They said, like, poke your head out, and I poke my head out, and then poke back in, and like, louder, you got to clap louder. And so that was really cool. They were really enthusiastic. And then other schools you go to, and they might not have had the same preparation. And then the teachers there on the day, they're like, "This is Rory, and he wrote this now," and they're just like open mouth, like. But I'm not 100% sure that they're putting two and two together.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, but either
Either
way,
way, either way, you are a rock star.
I think it's cool. I think it's what's really cool. Would be seeing because I mean I guess they don't know that we have jobs outside of this. But even if you do have a job, I think it's cool. And I think about this with my own daughter too. Like I think it's cool that she'll be able to grow up and see dad or for other kids seeing just authors and other people pursuing a passion.
Yeah.
And I think whether you do still work or not, you still got this thing in your life that you're passionate about, and you're not just letting it be. You're pursuing it, and you're having a good time. And yeah, I think that's really cool, and I think that's really inspiring for. Hopefully, it's really inspiring for young minds.
It is. I don't think it's any less. Like there's no one cookie cutter pathway to do this. And I think that's why all of us feel like we're winging it a little bit, is because I can't give somebody a step by step, checklist of if you do all of these things, then you will be an author and you will get this success. Because, like we said, there's so many things out of your control. So I love that there's so many different ways to do what we do. And as long as you're enjoying it and that you're doing it to inspire kids and also like I think in the beginning, a lot of people start off doing it, like especially mums, because, they want to make their kids proud, and absolutely I do. But then you've got to almost honor that little selfish part of you as well, as like, well, I'm actually doing it for me.
Yeah, yeah. For me, it's um, it's definitely about ego. Like I get a good feeling knowing that I'm good at something. Like
Yeah.
particularly, I always think about this from the perspective of like the boy who had learning difficulties. Like, I wasn't good at reading and writing and school in general. And yeah, I get like a little bit of a kick out of the fact that I'm able to write something and it comes out in a book. Every time I pick up one of my books, or every time I write a nice phrase, I always feel a little bit of pride. And yeah.
Yeah, you should feel heaps of pride, because I know so many people are proud of you as well. And any publishers watching, I need Rory to publish the book about Hansel and Gretel with the zombies. Like,
Look,
just
I've pared it back. It's no longer quite. It's still dark, but it's
oh yeah,
not as dark as it was. It's more of a yeah. It's a grim tale. It's a grim story, but it's in perfect picture book format. Um, it's under 500 words. It's.
if publishers need to get in contact with you, Rory, what is the best way for them to do that?
Contact my agent, or actually contact me directly on my website, and I'll put you in touch with my agent. But I'd love like it's definitely that's it's the same as that book I said before, where like, I'm playing the long game, and in
Yeah.
10 years time I'm going to resubmit. I'm never giving up on this story, because I feel like it's for me, the story is the story of my whole journey. Like it's the story that might appeal to a reluctant reader, and not a reluctant reader who's 5, a reluctant reader who's 10 or 12, and they want to pick up something that's manageable but still has content which suits their age. And I think I think picture books are for all ages personally.
Yeah,
um
I agree.
so yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to make this happen because
Thank you.
I need this book. So anyone's watching, if you would like to have an amazing picture book that is written by Rory H. Mather, make sure you get in contact with him and he can shoot you through to his agent, because honestly, like, we love your story so much. Like, exactly what you're saying. My Tommy is turning 10. He's still on picture book levels, and he loves your stories. And thank you so much for being so brave and confident confident to, honor that little boy who wasn't so great at spelling in school and to still follow your passion. And thank you so much for coming and chatting with me on all things picture books.
Thank you so much for having me, Michelle. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you. And if you would like to get in contact with Rory, like I said in the comments, I'm going to put a link to his website, not necessarily publishers, but if you just want to have a look at his books or get in contact with him for a school visit. Thank you so much, Rory.
Thank you so much, Michelle.